when it comes to legislation in the history of this republic.
The liberal lion of the Senate.
Going to see Ted Kennedy always felt like you were going to see a kind of uber mensch. He was so nice to young people or people who were upwards in their careers and had questions.
Kennedy's voice, his presence, his force has been deeply felt.
He was considered one of the most effective lawmakers of the past.
We heard it all. Thank you very much. The ratings indicate that people don't believe it and they don't care. He was also detested by more Americans than any other senator for reasons that you could pretty much put together. I mean, after all, the women's movement came about the same time that Mary Jo Kopechne was left to drown in a car. Imagine dying like that. And they've said nothing about that because, well, the rules don't apply to Ubermensch. They have certain privileges that the rest of us don't have. If you look at a woman at work the wrong way, you get sued because you're not an Ubermensch. If, on the other hand, you let one to drown in a car, you get away with it because, after all, you're advancing the Chavez agenda here in America. Let's see, what else do we have here on the Savage Nation for the listening public interested in polemics and reality? Let us see. Obama needs a break from his vacation, that we know. 1,000 banks to fail. Really? How are they going to prop that up? CIA report. Oh, did you hear about this? The CIA used secondhand smoke as a form of torture. That's right. Some of our CIA agents had the nerve to blow smoke in the face of the Islamic fascists that they were quizzing. And, of course, that really should result, I would think, in 20 years in prison. I mean, the ACLU probably going to run after them because you know smoke is toxic. Secondhand smoke is very, very toxic. And to blow that in the smoke of a man who would smoke an entire city, I mean, it's just unheard of. After all, we're better than that. I mean, isn't that the liberal credo? We're better than them, therefore we can't resort to their type of behavior? And they don't even mean cutting off heads and things like that while chanting to God. They mean just blowing smoke in a terrorist's face is a terrible thing to do. I mean, he might wind up sneezing or coughing. And who knows, there might even be some kind of religious prohibition against blowing secondhand smoke in the face of a religious man. I don't know. You have to turn to the Ubermensch at the ACLU to find out just exactly how offensive that might be to a religious terrorist. You don't know. And as you well know, their religion trumps your religion because, well, it's just a very good way to control you. So there it is. Let's see what else is on michaelsavage.com. I haven't really looked at the website today. I've been busy eating Indian food for lunch and went to a buffet, overate. I always say to myself, don't go to the buffets. You know what's going to happen. You're going to eat that second, third plate. I ate the fourth plate. You know what's going to happen. You're making believe you're going there for the rice and the vegetarian, then you're going to eat the lamb, and I did 3 times. Because you say to yourself, well, the lamb is dead anyway. It doesn't matter. The poor thing's dead. And you do a Hail Mary over the lamb 3 or 4 times. It's unbelievable. This is how you cheat on your diet, is you go to buffets and you go back 3 or 4 times. That's what matters to me at this phase of my life. Is my mother used to say it was Italian or Chinese at the end of her years. Now, I'm not anywhere near the end of my years. It is true. I'm putting together the Savage Library. I have someone archiving every radio tape I've ever saved going back to 1994. What a job. You'd think I was crazy. I have radio tapes going back to when I was a local host because I knew that there was gold in them Nor Hills and them knob tapes. And manuscripts. After all, I've only written 25 books, most of them in longhand, and the manuscripts must be worth something. I realize that I'm not as famous as a man who drowned a girl in a car, but there might be a buyer out there for such an estate. You never know. Might be worth a few pennies now and again. All of the handwritten manuscripts, the notes, the letters, the audio tapes going back to 1994, things of that nature. So my own non-Ubermensch way, I'm trying to put these things together. And, I mean, that's what I've been doing sort of on the side here. So don't expect me to get too excited about Ted Kennedy, nor to bash him. I mean, look, you know what the story is already. He was a kid born into a rich family. He was the party boy of the family, probably the least, let us say had the least luster of the 3 brothers. And he inherited the mantle, and he pushed the far-left agenda. He did some terrible things. And to the liberals, he's an icon because he advanced the socialist agenda. To the American people, though, who are not liberal, they're kind of offended by all of the onions and handkerchiefs that we're seeing now, simply being used in order to advance socialized medicine. So what else do you want to talk about? We can talk about that, but let's go to some other topics. How about Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh talking about freedom of speech being threatened by Obama and refusing to discuss Michael Savage twisting in the wind since May 5th being banned in Britain? Do you think that makes Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck hypocrites to any extent, or are they incapable of hypocrisy because they declare themselves not to be liberals? Is that possible, that they themselves declare themselves to be Ubermensch in some ways because they're not liberals, and in so doing they could actually think that you're stupid, and you don't see the glaring hypocrisy in them squeezing onions in handkerchiefs yesterday, talking about freedom of speech being threatened by Obama and his minions without not once mentioning true conservative, patriot Michael Savage? How is that possible? How did they get away with this? San Diego, Mike, you're on the Savage Nation. Go ahead, please.
Thanks, Mike. I think they get away with it because it's a script. They're reading from a script, and they have to educate the public on what they're told to educate us on, and I refuse to believe it. When a very popular radio host like yourself is banned from a foreign country, it is really, really a hypocritical thing to even avoid it, let alone talk around it. I stayed up to watch that show last night and ended up turning it off in disgust.
Well, I watched it. I was drinking. I took the afternoon off. I wasn't feeling well, but I had great entertainment watching the two circus clowns put on the act about the First Amendment. I truly enjoyed them talking about freedom of speech and saying, my goodness, there's something missing in this discussion.
Well,
there was sort of a pregnant emptiness in the whole discussion of freedom of speech being threatened. I said, goodness, they never heard of Michael Savage and banned in Britain? How's that possible?
I think it's possible because they have one agenda. They keep saying Democrats bad, Republicans good, and they don't see the trees in the forest.
Well, I don't know. We do our best to get out our message here on the Savage Nation. All I know is that millions of people who listen to this show understand that true McCarthyism exists. It has reared its head in this country. And the fact of the matter is there's collusion between the U.S. government in the Obama administration, or possibly even going back to the Bush administration, and the Labour government in England in having me targeted and put on a list with murderers and terrorists. You would think that a man so concerned with freedom of speech as the golfer would know that. After all, he knows everything. Thank you for the call. Incidentally, you can see what I've written in part by going to michaelsavage.com. I haven't promoted the book at all this week because I'm about to go to press. I would say we're going to send it to the printer next week, so if you want a copy, you really should order it. I mean, the big sales are going to come after Labor Day, and by that point, I think the first printing is going to be set. I would say get your name on the list for the first printing, first edition. It's the same exact situation as remember Psychological Nudity was the same thing last year? I kept saying first edition, first printing. It's going to go, and then it did. Then it was the first edition, second printing. You know, okay, whatever you say. Well, what is it worth? 10 cents more? I don't know what it's worth. I was going through my archives today because the archivist needs all the tapes, and I uncovered mountains of tapes from 1994, 95, 96 when I was a local host. Believe it, they're on tape. These are on actual audio tapes. I used to drive them crazy at the station and make the poor engineers record these shows, and I would put little wrappers around them with handwritten notes. Like today I talked about Ted Kennedy and Chappaquiddick. That was in 94. I was still things of that nature. Immigration out of control, 94, 95. While Glenn Beck was in rehab, I guess I was still talking. I don't really know, but all these notes are on. And I discovered old coins. Would you believe it? I found boxes and boxes of Morgan silver dollars, Indian head cents. Then I stumbled upon some things owned by my children in storage. God, like junior high school report cards and journals that I had them keep when we would take them on ocean trips when they were in school. I remember we used to take them on trips and take them out of school because there was a credo that your child will learn more on a cruise on an ocean liner and traveling and experiences than he will in the 6th or 7th or 8th grade. Well, that was a liberal credo. They wouldn't say that anymore because liberals don't travel with their children. They're too busy traveling with themselves so they can switch hit with each other while they're on the road, and the children are left at home with a house sitter with Ritalin. But we actually traveled with our children on ocean liners, and I found the journals, they're very touching. Usually it's very much out of Mark Twain. It's very cute. The journals, I say, okay, look, son, here's what we're going to do. We're going on a trip for 4 weeks in December. You're going to be out of school. I'm going to miss 2 weeks, 3 weeks of school. But I'll tell you what, you're going to keep a journal of every port we go to. That's when I was collecting plants in the South Pacific. Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, the Palmyras. I mean, amazing places. And I said, and if you meet interesting people on the ship, you're going to make notes of it. And birds, you're going to make notes of birds that you see and things. Sure, Dad. Great. Love it. And the first day, they sit at the table, the card table, while the people are somewhere else up in the dining room, and they write. You look at the journal 20 years later, it's only 2 pages are dutifully entered, and then the rest are blank because kids are kids. They were busy living and enjoying themselves instead of writing down a stupid journal that nobody would ever read. They actually were looking at the birds. They actually were running on the decks of the ship. God bless them. I'm glad they didn't keep a journal. But those first 2 pages were really well good. Penmanship was great. No, those are the days.